Hello, and thank you for joining me again on Run Level 0. Today we're going to take a look at Mageia 3. Now, if up until a couple of years ago, if you were new to Linux, coming over from, say, Windows or Mac, and you were looking to get your feet wet in a safe, user-friendly, stable environment, one of your better choices was Mandriva Linux. Mandriva was being hosted by Edge IT, but unfortunately Edge IT was dissolved in 2010 and the developers of Mandriva were laid off. Well, those developers forked their own distribution, which became Mageia. Now Mageia still maintains their user friendliness. They maintain their own repos. They are their own distribution. They're not based on anyone else. They maintain a rolling release cycle, which means that your system will always be up to date. Now there's some confusion if you're a new user about what a rolling release cycle is and how it differs from a scheduled release. You basically have two choices here. A rolling release cycle distribution is one that continually updates and upgrades itself. So in theory, as long as you don't do anything to hose your system, you should never have to reinstall your operating system. If you allow it to continually do its updates and get its regular patches, your system will always be at the latest, greatest version. Now this is in opposition to or compared to a distribution like, say, Ubuntu, that has a regular 6-month release cycle in which major updates or upgrades to the system are given in blocks. So what they will have is, say, Ubuntu 12.04, which was what they call an LTS, a long-term support version, and then 6 months later you'll have 12.10 and then 13.04. Every 6 months you'll have a major update that comes out until you get to a new long-term release version every couple of years. But in order to go from that 12.04 to 14.04, it will require a major system upgrade or a reinstallation of the operating system, which can introduce some problems. Now, having a rolling release cycle, depending on your hardware and what applications you're running, that too can introduce some problems. So, say for instance you're using an older wireless card. If the rolling release cycle introduces a new kernel, you may lose drivers for that older wireless card. And while you can downgrade the kernel, you can downgrade the drivers, for a new user, that is going to be a little advanced for them to do. So in that respect, sticking with the 6-month release cycle could potentially cause you less problems. So one is not really superior to the other. It's going to be more a matter of personal preference. You know your system, you know your requirements, and you know your hardware. So based on those factors, you should be able to choose the right release model that's better for you, the schedule release or the rolling release. So I'll get off that for a while. Back to Mageia. Mageia does maintain a rolling release cycle. So let's take a look at Mageia 3 and see what you get. Here you go, the Mageia 3 desktop. Mageia still maintains a beautiful, elegant desktop environment. Now when you download Mageia, you're going to have several options off of their website. You can download a couple of live CDs if you want to try it without installing it, or you can opt to go for a larger installation DVD, which is the way that I went. Now if you go with the installation DVD, you're not going to get a live environment. It's going to launch the installer directly, but you will have the option of choosing which desktop environment you want to install. So you can do several different computers or several different virtual machines off the same installation media. The installer was, in my opinion, very friendly. I tried to stick to very basic when I installed this, do it from a new user's perspective, just kind of clicking next through and answering some basic questions. And it did give me the option to choose from the Kde Plasma Desktop, the GNOME 3 Desktop, or one of several community editions. And I chose to stick with the more traditional KDE desktop environment here, the Plasma Desktop. So when you boot into the Plasma Desktop, you do get an elegant, beautiful desktop environment. It's laid out in a traditional fashion that most new users should find inviting and familiar. On the desktop, there's an icon for the home folder, which will take you to the root file system. See? And this is Dolphin, is the default file manager for KDE, which Dolphin is a very robust file manager. You get a lot of options in here. They have a nice system theme going on here that you'll find consistent throughout the system. There's also several utilities that you can add in here. You can add, say, a terminal. Dolphin has an integrated terminal. This is console with a K. So what I like about this, as you grow in your abilities in Linux, as you transition from a new to an intermediate to an advanced user, you're going to be relying on your console more and more. And what's great about having it integrated into your file browser, your file manager, you'll see when I navigate into the pictures folder, it automatically changes directory on me. So it makes it a lot easier to navigate and do work on files right from the terminal. You'll find this handy as you advance. Also on the desktop, you'll see you have the trash bin, and there's an icon that will take you to the Mageia community page that gives you some information about how to become involved in the Mageia project if you want to. And I would greatly encourage you, if you have the skill set, if you have the time to contribute to a distribution, I would encourage you to do so. And not only a distribution, but also your favorite applications like LibreOffice or Mozilla. If you have a application set that you like or a distro that you like, please try to find a way to support them, either with your time, talents, or with your finances by making them a small donation. These guys, they offer us great products free of charge. But it costs the developers time and money to put this together, so please show them some love. Okay, back to the desktop. In a traditional desktop layout, you have one panel across the bottom, and I like the way they've sized it. It's very easy on the eyes, very pleasing. I hate it when you get a really tiny or just huge panel, but this looks very nice. Beginning in the lower right-hand corner of the panel are a couple of session buttons that will allow you to lock the screen or power off, restart, log out. With the KDE Plasma Desktop, if you ever have a question about what something does, you can just hover over it for a moment. You'll see you do get a pop-up that gives you a hint. Continuing to the left, we have the clock and calendar, a battery monitor if applicable, volume control with mixer, clipboard manager, network manager, and a notifications area. This is where any pop-ups or system messages will appear. Open applications will be displayed in the central portion of the menu, or of the panel rather. And moving over to the left, you have a shortcut for Firefox, which is the default web browser in this instance, as well as the Mageia Control Center. Now, Mageia Control Center, I have to say, and when we launch it, it's going to prompt us for our root password. And if I can get on my soapbox for just a moment more, your root password, if you're working on the system that separates root from user, always make your root password different than your user password. That's just for your own protection. And please try to use a secure password. So when we launch the Mageia Control Center, I'm not going to worry about this right now. The Mageia Control Center, in my opinion, is one of the best control centers that I've seen. You can access and configure almost anything in your system right from here. And it's very well categorized, very easy on the eyes. You have your software management where you can install and remove software, update your system, configure updates frequency, and configure media sources for install and update. We're going to come back to this in a moment. Hardware configuration. You see how everything is laid out very well. Network and internet settings. System settings. Network sharing. Management of local drives, where you can partition right in here. System security, where you can configure your permissions, authentication, and set up your firewall. And you have your boot options in here if you want to configure your system's boot. So the Mageia Control Center, I have to give this a big thumbs up. I really like how this control center is laid out. Let's go back to software management for a moment. For you new users, if you haven't used Mageia before, and this will hold true to, you need to check this out in the other Mandriva forks of Rosa and Open Mandriva. You need to come in and look at the software management. One of the first things you want to do when you log into your new Mageia installation is launch the Mageia Control Center. Again, it's this icon. Go to the Software Management tab and go to the Configure Media Sources for Install and Update. This is going to launch your mirrors. Again, I'm not worried about that right now. You're going to want to choose yes when that pop-up comes up. But on Mageia, you have a couple of legacy entries here in your mirrors list. Your mirror list is where your computer is going to draw its updates and packages from for updating your system and installing new software. There are a couple of legacy entries in Mageia when you first log on, and it's here under Type CD-ROM. This was your installation media. So if you do not see they're enabled, you want to go ahead and uncheck these. If you leave these enabled, when you go to update your system or install software, it's probably going to throw an error. So just uncheck them and click OK. Now you should be ready to update your system and install those daemons they were asking for, install software and that sort of thing. So leaving the Mageia Control Center and returning to the panel, next on the list is System Settings. Now this is different from the Mageia Control Panel. This is the control center for the Kde Plasma Desktop. And from here you can check your account details, and again, KDE's control center is phenomenal as well. Everything is laid out just logically. It's all pretty much self-explanatory. From your power management, if you don't want your system going to sleep, you can control how that operates here. If you have a laptop, you can choose what happens when you shut the lid, that sort of thing. But more importantly for you, if you like your eye candy, this is where you're going to control KWin, which is the window manager for the Kde Plasma Desktop. And that's here under Desktop Effects. So when you go into Desktop Effects, be sure if you have your graphics card installed, I'm running this in a virtual, so I'm not going to get much by the way of eye candy enabled here. But you're going to make sure you check Enable Desktop Effects at Startup. Go to the All Effects tab, and this is where you're going to be able to set your thing like transparency on windows, login sound and animations, minimize, maximize animations. Your wobbly windows are here, as well as your box switch, desktop cube, desktop grid. All of those items are in here, and when you enable them by the check mark, by the checkbox, you can go in and customize settings with the little wrench icon here. So just feel free to play around in there. You have an icon on your panel for a quick access to Dolphin, as well as a pager. This is where you're going to control your virtual desktops. In Linux, you have the option of having virtual desktops. A virtual desktop is like having multiple monitors just on one screen. So if I open Dolphin here and switch virtual desktops, you see I have a clean desktop to work on. But I can go back to Dolphin if I want to keep it open. So that's kind of how it works. Next to the pager is a activity manager, which when you click on that, you have a couple that are already installed, and these activities control the layout of your desktop. By default is the one on the left. On the right is a clean desktop, so when I click it, you can see my icons go away. So whichever you prefer, or you can create a new one. Moving on is a Show Desktop button that will iconify all open windows and show the desktop. And then you have the Applications menu. Clicking on the Applications menu, we see that Mageia they've stuck with a more simplistic menu layout, and I really appreciate this. I think this was a wise decision on the part of Mageia. The Kde Plasma Desktop offers many choices for a more advanced, searchable, modern menu system, but those can get kind of confusing to a new user. So I like the way they stuck with a simple menu by default. At the top of the menu, you have your recently used applications. Under that, you have the application submenus, and of course the applications are categorized by their use. There's also a quick launch to the add or the install and remove software, which we'll get to that in a moment, as well as actions. You have a favorites menu, a recently used menu, you can run commands directly, and you have your session manager here to log out, lock, or shut down, restart, that sort of thing. So I appreciate what Mageia did here with their menu choice. So let's take a look at what's installed. Now, Mageia has a lot going on here as far as installed applications go. They're pretty much a one-stop shop as far as desktop environments. You have a complete set of applications installed. And even though there's a lot going on, they've managed to, through careful selection of their applications, they've managed to avoid redundancy and really avoid bloat. So while there is a lot, it all makes sense. Now we're not going to go through every application that's installed, but I will hit on a couple of the highlights. You have FileZilla for FTP. Again, Firefox is the default web browser, but you also have Konqueror, the default KDE web browser. So if you want to play with that, you can. Kmail is the email client. See, we have Conversation for IRC. And just like on the panel, if you don't know what something does, just hover over the name and you'll see a little pop-up that will tell you what it does. You have KTorrent for your BitTorrent needs. Under Office, you have the full LibreOffice suite, as well as several organization utilities. For graphics, of course, we have the GIMP installed, as well as several other Paint and digital graphics applications. For sound and video, Amarok is the audio player, Audacity for a sound editor, Kdenlive is installed for video editing. You have a shortcut to the sound mixer, KMix, as well as Pulse Audio volume control. Dragon Player is installed, and Zine. The Tools menu will give you access to several network utilities like Knotes and Clipper and that sort of thing, as well as your Archive Manager. But at the very top, you'll see a submenu for System Tools that'll give you another way to access the Mageia and KDE control centers, as well as KSysGuard, your network center, printer settings, and that sort. Let's take a peek at KSysGuard and see where we're running. Now, in my experience, Mageia does run rather heavy on the desktop, and as you can see, we're running at 590 we're running at 590 megabytes. Wouldn't that be something? A 590 gigabyte desktop. 590 megabytes of RAM being consumed here. Now this is running in a virtual, and as is true with all my virtuals, I've given it 2 gigs of dedicated RAM and 2 dedicated processors, and it seems to be functioning fine. But that said, because it is consuming right at 600 meg of RAM, and it's pulling, this morning when I was running it, it's pulling between 15 and 20% of my processor, I really wouldn't recommend this for older hardware. But as long as you do have 2 gigs of RAM, 2 processors, you should get along just fine. Well, folks, that's Mageia in a nutshell. I'm really impressed by it. I do recommend it. It is a stable platform. Again, it has a rolling release cycle. I definitely recommend this for a new user. It's on par with any other distro as far as being friendly to the new user and to the more advanced intermediate user alike. There's something here for everybody. If you're a college student or if you're looking for something for your home office, Mageia could be right up your alley. So I would encourage you to download it. Give it a try. Let me know. Give me some feedback. Let me know about your experiences with Mageia and the other Mandriva derivatives, the Rosa and Open Mandriva, and PC Linux OS. They're kissing cousins, or rather brothers, as in the distro world. So let me know what you think. Thank you for joining me. I hope to be with you soon for another video.